Hello everyone, welcome to another video of a chess league match of mine. I'm going to make this video fairly quick, hopefully 10 minutes or less. This match was played Thursday night on I think the 26th of November 2020. Full board match, and we ended up winning the match. And I was playing somebody who is approximately 2,000 on their real life over the board FIDE ratings. So I was white, and we start off with the Slav, which is a system that black can play very well, and sort of just keep themselves roughly level. I found that it's rather unambitious though, so white can often get draws, and black is happy to take them. So I play bishop f4, which is not the main line. Normally you're meant to play knight c3 or take on d5 first. However, I like setting up the positions with e3, and that way I defend the c4 pawn and I've got my bishop outside of the pawn chain. It's now very active, pointing at the b8 knight. e6, knight c3, then bishop d6 is the main line move. And white has lots of options here. Bishop g3 is certainly playable. Knight to e5 is also a move. Leaving your bishop where it is and playing queen b3. Bishop g5 is another rare move. And also bishop takes d6 being one of the most popular at my level. And the plan is essentially for white to make use of the dark square weaknesses that black has, where their queen is essentially going to have to do the duty on the dark squares. And you can often try to get rid of black's light squared bishop with moves like f3 coming up. And here it's roughly equal, but I'd still give the edge to white. I'd prefer white in these positions. So in the game, after knight c3, bishop e7, queen b3, queen b6. And the line that I've faced got a lot against, I played in the London Chess Classic, I think 2017, and in one of the first rounds I played a 2400 IM as black, and I had roughly this position with black, and he was able to beat me with the c5 move, so that when I traded queens, white has the a file for the rook, and they also plan to shove the b-pawn up the board and trade off one of the b-pawns, so they are no longer saddled with double pawns. And as black, I also played in the British Championships against Jovanka Huska, who also made very easy work of my position. I wasn't playing very well, and she was playing incredibly well, so beat me quite easily. Now here they play knight h5, but the mainline move is rook fc8 normally, or something along those lines. Because here, with knight h5, I don't have to drop my bishop back to g3 and then lose the bishop. What I do instead is play takes, and I think black has to take back on c6. It looks very suspicious taking this, because I at least win a pawn, and rook b8. And I assume I can simply just take this knight, and the pawn cannot even be taken because of c6. So not good at all for black to capture my bishop. He took, and then I played bishop c7, so I'm still preventing rook b8 going onto the open file. Rook fc8 was played, and I then dropped the bishop back to a5. This way I have got it anchored on a5, and then can play b4, and it supports my pawn. This means that my break, pawn b5, can be a lot easier to get in. I don't need to worry about black's counterplay. It's a very nice position for me. a6 was played. This does leave the pawn slightly vulnerable due to my f1 bishop, but they are attempting to prevent the move b5. And I simply developed, although a teammate had suggested king d2 instead of castling, because I don't have any problems with the safety of my king, and I may want it in the centre of the board. At the time, I had thought that there might be some problems, so that castling would be easier to play, but on reflection I think he's correct in that king d2 is the stronger move than castling. h6, and I continue with my plan, which is to target the a6 pawn. What I do is rook a3, and then rook to a1 from f1. Here I have doubled up, and my bishop may move to b6 in the future, with an attack ready-made on a6. Black actually helps me out a great deal. The move which the computer fancies is g5, and I probably would continue with my move knight to a4, and then planning maybe knight b6 or bishop b6 to sort of clamp down and continue this slow squeeze like a boa constrictor. But instead bishop d8, and I traded the bishops. My bishop's a really bad one, it can barely move, but their bishop was a lot more flexible, so I'm happy to trade, and then I simply win a pawn. Takes, takes, take on c6. This c5 pawn is now incredibly strong. If I can push it and safeguard the pawn, I think this is the path to victory. They played rook b3, and I came in thinking of playing knight d6. And here I saw that after rook b8, knight d6, I lose instantly to rook b1 check. And I take, they would have taken, bishop f1 to stop mate, bishop d3 to go for my bishop. I just barely have time to guard it, but I thought rook d1 was the winning move, so that they can take on d2 and then be a piece up. What I did instead was I played h3, which turns out not to be a bad move, but I kind of overlooked a key move. It's a bit silly of me. I should have seen this threat, or this opportunity Black had, which is to give up a rook for 2 minor pieces, which normally is a very favourable trade, and white would be probably a bit worse normally, but my c5 pawn is so strong that it overpowers the black pieces. I check and then can push the pawn. Black move the knight out the way of the pawn, and then rook b8, pinning their knight and planning moves like knight to e5 and pushing the pawn up. And at this point, actually, my opponent simply resigned because they could not see a way to easily stop me getting to the end of the board. Apparently rook b2 is a computer move, but then I can play rook a6, so I don't believe this can work. And h5 doesn't really make much sense to me, but apparently it's one of the computer moves. Knight e5, and then I think it was bishop e4 was another suggestion. But what I can do there is simply trade the rook for the knight, losing the exchange, but then play c7. And my pawn will promote, and I'll easily be ahead. Possibly the most stubborn defence that I could see for black was playing knight to e4. And then if I push my pawn, knight d6. And it's possible that black just has enough to hold on to the game for a bit longer. It still might lose, though, because of moves like knight to e5. And if I'm allowed to play what I want, I might end up playing knight d7. And if they take my knight, I can trade the rooks, and they are forced to step away and let me promote. So there are lots and lots of tactics involving promotion, and I don't think in the long term that black can stop my pawn getting to the end of the board unless they give up a piece or make some other big concession and let me win the game. So that was my match. I thought I played it quite well. I only made a few small errors, but they weren't really that bad. Probably the biggest one was not really seeing that they could trade the rook for 2 pieces. But overall, I'm happy with the game, happy with the result, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.